Hello, everyone, and welcome to Chalk Talk. I am your host, Armando Marsal. As always, with me is my friend, Bobby Gomes. How's it going, my brother?
Going well. Just excited for the showdown in Sunday.
Yeah, man, this showdown slate is a bit more exciting than it has been in weeks past. You got two really good teams, in my opinion. Two offenses loaded with weapons. So decision making tonight is definitely going to be crucial. And you're going to have to find ways to be creative because I think everyone knows that both teams have a ton of talent. You got two really good pass catching backs, two very solid quarterbacks here. Not to mention, the tight end matchup is very good for both sides here. And you have Antonio Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster. You got Devin Funchess on the other side. Lots of options here, I think, and it's going to be interesting to see how we approach the slate, this evening slate, and how we approach the lineup construction. And that's what we're here for now, to kind of go over that, man. So you called me this afternoon, and you mentioned some things that I found very intriguing. You said, I think maybe a good approach is starting with two kickers and going from there. So give me your thoughts on that because, that got me thinking. And I've been able to make some pretty, in my opinion, strong lineups, kind of taking that approach.
Yeah, so for cash, 50-50s are cash games head to heads. I think it's very profitable to go two kickers and just try to build off game scripts. What I would do is in terms of the captain position, go to the lowest high usage player. So like say last Monday night, that player was Dion Lewis. And then from there, I built my lineups. I was like, obviously you see Zeke is the high usage guy on Dallas, so I got him in there. And then on top of that, I just went and built it by game script. So I had Mariota, Corey Davis, and then the two kickers. So anytime there was a touchdown, I got that extra point. Field goal, I got the three with the high floor and cash games. Tournaments you could obviously build differently, but just in cash, like I feel like it's a good way. Try to just predict the touchdowns, have the kickers in there because once the kickers get above 10 points, it's hard to beat. You kind of need those guys. Like I feel like they're you should have at least one. I would say like I like Gano tonight. Just from a perspective of game script, but that's how my feelings on cash games.
Yeah, and in tournaments you can kind of take a similar approach, but instead of playing maybe two kickers, maybe you could go for someone like Jesse James, who it's just 2,400. On the slate, very volatile, but he does have some red zone targets, and those are kind of the outliers that you got to kind of think about when you only have one game on the slate. You kind of look at something that's off the page. Yeah, he might not be on the field as much as Vance McDonald. He might not see the volume that Vance McDonald sees, but he does get targets in the red zone. And you know what? If he does jump in, if he does get a touchdown here, you're automatically guaranteed 7 points from someone at 2,400. I think it's very, very good. And that's not even including any yardage in addition or any other catches. It's just, assuming they're on the one and he just catches a 1 yard touchdown pass. You're guaranteed 7 points. So you look at some of these, if we're expecting this to be a little bit more high scoring, like Vegas is anticipating, I think this game has a 52 over under here, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Actually, it's a 50.5 over under here. I'm sorry?
I think it opened at 52, correct? I might be wrong. But...
I'm seeing that it actually opened at 50 and it jumped up half a point. I thought it was 52. I guess it depends what book you're looking at. I'm looking at Fantasy Labs here, and that's what they have. So I guess it depends on what book you're looking at. But to me, I think this is going to be high scoring. 67% of the bets are currently on the over anyways. So I guess a lot of people are agreeing with me. I think you are also on the same page where you can see both of these offenses pop off. So talk to me about the running back situation here for both teams. They both have very strong pass catching backs. Connor is a high volume running back, has been so good this season. Without Bell there and him being the workhorse there, it's just been so efficient, so good. If he gets it done between the tackles, he catches passes out of the backfield. Give me your thoughts here on this running back situation for both teams.
Yeah, last week Connor went off versus Baltimore. Kind of in a situation where no one had him based on Baltimore's defense and their performance throughout the year. I think he had rushed it 24 times for 107 yards, 7 catches, and a touchdown. He had 9 targets too. So the way he's being utilized, honestly, his numbers are better than Bell's. This usage rate is absolutely insane. I love Connor. I love McCaffrey. The way I'm building, though, I think I'm going to go with Cam in terms of like my captain position. I know you'd probably prefer the running back but Cam's rushing equity in cash games, I feel like that touchdown equity is like something that you can capitalize because he's going to throw and he's going to run. I think he's the guy that I'm kind of targeting for the captain spot. I don't know. You're probably going to go somewhere different if you were. I just know. Well, I don't know. You like Juju. I like Juju too. So
I have a good combination of both of them. Actually, I like this game so much that I created more than my normal amount of lineups tonight. And I have roughly 50% Cam. Actually, let's say 40% Cam, 40% Juju in the captain spot, and then the rest of the lineups are mixed in between Vance McDonald, Greg Olsen, and I got one lineup with Jesse James just because I was able to just pretty much stack up, that entire team. And again, if Jesse James just falls into the end zone at his price tag, I think I'm going to get, a good return there, especially if everyone else pans out as I'm expecting them to pan out. So I'm kind of with you. I think this is a game where I love both of these running backs. Full disclosure, I was wrong on James Conner last week. I was fading him. That didn't work out. He had obviously a big game, and that just shows me he can get it done against anyone. But this is a respectable Carolina run defense, and the same can be said about the Steelers. They have a respectable run defense as well as they haven't been burned too much by pass catching back. So I kind of lean on the receivers for both teams. I kind of lean on the quarterbacks and tight ends. I think that's we're going to see the majority of the damage. Can Connor and can McCaffrey get it done here? Absolutely. They're both so talented they could get it done against anyone. But I'm tempering my expectations for both of them. Not saying I don't have exposure to them, but I'm probably going to be well under the field here. Do you think that's too risky? Is that something you would not recommend, or you're kind of on the same boat with me in this one?
No, I think we're in the same boat. It makes me a little nervous just because if you roster Cam and the captain, you really can't. I'd rather play AB, I feel like, than go to McCaffrey or Connor. You just like AB at home. You got Ben at home. Like the numbers behind that seem to work out usually. So
I think he gets Bradbury, right? Which is also he gets James Bradbury. So that's good. That's a good thing.
Carolina defense in general has been getting absolutely smoked. So AB for the 100 and maybe a touch, hopefully 2.
And that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking okay, so obviously, game theory wise, in my opinion, James Conner and McCaffrey are going to be far more owned. And when I mean far more owned, maybe 10, 20%, but that's significant in a slate like this. So I think they're both going to be more owned than Antonio Brown. Right there, it makes my decision super easy. Brown has as high a ceiling, if not higher, than both of those guys. We've seen him just smash. We've seen 200 yards and multiple touchdown games out of him. It's happened before. I think he also has a very high floor. And if I'm going to get an ownership discount, from him between the other two backs that I think are not in as good position as he is, I think that's a no-brainer, man. So that's why I'm totally with you. I think being overexposed to Antonio Brown is the way to go tonight. I think a lot of builds are going to have the running backs like you mentioned. So I'm totally on board with you on this one, man. Anything on the tight ends that we talked about a little bit about Greg Olsen. It is a good matchup for him. Pittsburgh has struggled against tight ends. Carolina hasn't been as bad against tight ends as Pittsburgh has, but they've still been a little bit vulnerable to the position. Putting Vance McDonald or Jesse James, whoever you prefer.
I love Vance.
I actually started off the day with a lot of Vance McDonald in my captain. But the more I messed around with the lineups and stuff like that, I was able to do kind of what I wanted to do with both Juju Smith, Schuster here, and Cam Newton in the captain. So I think McDonald's in a good spot, and again, if he's my favorite tight end on the slate because of price and opportunity. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Olsen just, getting the end zone again, have another big game, or Jesse James, stealing a touchdown here from Vance McDonald. Those things wouldn't surprise me. Any thoughts on putting any of them in the captain's slot just to kind of, I think that would be a little bit different and build it, get a unique build?
Yeah, I think in tournaments, definitely if it's like $180 tournament, then I'd probably be more of a higher floor. I feel like Vance would be the first guy a lot of people go to in tournaments.
Yeah.
In the $10, I'm pretty much just trying to predict injuries, and then if McCaffrey goes down, CJ Anderson right there, throw him in the cap. But I don't feel like that's a tournament I don't know. You can basically win, and you probably need a lot of luck in that situation. So.
Yeah, and that's where I think a guy like Jesse James comes into play in that kind of tournament where you don't need him to build rosters. And he's so far down there that I don't think people really go all the way down to kind of look at it. I wouldn't be surprised to see him come in at like 17, 12% own, max 20% own, and, just put you in a good position to win a tournament, man.
To note, James Washington projected 77% of the snaps. If you're playing like a $10 on DK, I wouldn't mind firing him in the captain spot. I feel like the builds are pretty nice if you get him in there. 81% of the offensive snaps last week. Like, he's pretty much the third man on the depth chart in terms of the passing game. So when everyone goes to Vance, maybe pivoting to James Washington and that $10 isn't the worst play. So I don't know, maybe getting him in there.
Yeah, I think that's a good call, and I think that's something. These are the things you have to consider in these, one game showdown slates, and in those kind of big tournaments, you kind of have to go way off the board, because your goal is to outright win this, not split it, 20, 30 ways here, 50 ways. Granted, paying $10 and chopping it like 1,500 between a bunch of people, yeah, that'd be great. But if you can find a unique build like you just mentioned, I think that's the kind of the way to go. Any final thoughts? I'm not going to be playing any of these defenses. The Steelers defense has been playing better, from a football standpoint, but that hasn't really translated into a ton of fantasy points. So I just don't think it's necessary to go there. I think if you're trying to be unique and different, I can totally see why you would do that, but not something I'm planning on doing. Are you thinking of rostering any of these defenses, or is this not, something you're planning on doing this evening?
I don't hate Pitt D.
Okay.
That's pretty much. I don't hate the play. Cam's can be turnover prone here and there. So, and obviously Pittsburgh's at home. I think it just kind of favors them. Yeah.
So again, they've been playing better. So there's certainly, merit into considering it, especially if you think that this game is not going to be as high scoring as Vegas is projecting to be. Any final thoughts here, man? I think we pretty much covered it really well. And if you have anything else you want to add that we may have not, touched on, feel free to.
No, I think we got it.
All right. So this Sunday, a nice little game, 11 game slate that we got going on here. Some interesting games. I think, some really good spots for some of these offenses. We have, if I'm not mistaken, we have at least 5 games with a 50 point over under or higher, which is, obviously very good to see. And the first game we're going to talk about, Bobby, this weekend is the New Orleans Saints headed to Cincy to take on the Bengals. No AJ Green. So we have a 54 over under. It's gone down a point since it opened. from 55. The Saints are 5.5-point favorites here on the road, a 29.75 implied team total. The Bengals have a 24.25 implied team total. Let me point something out because this is where sometimes these things can be deceiving. So the 72% of the bets are currently on the over. However, the game still went down 1 point, the over-under here. To me, that just says sharp money is on the under. That's what it just screams at me, because most of the bets are on the over, but it's still moving downward. So would you agree that, on that analysis, that just appears that there's just sharp money on that under?
Yeah, no, I like that. I like that call. Like, honestly, I think it says a lot about the Saints defense at 2,200, moving from 4 to 5. I really like that play. I think it might go overlooked. I think a lot of people are going to pay up for the Chiefs, pay up for defenses like that in cash. And I think that the Saints D here at 2,200 is a pretty legit play, point per dollar.
Yeah, and I also think that this, I don't think Brees is going to come out here and sling it. I think they're going to try to run the ball, like we saw them do in week 7 and week 8. It just appears that when they're on the road, they're a little bit more inclined to run the ball for some reason. And I think this is a good spot for the run game here. I think, we're going to see, Mark Ingram at 4,500. So intriguing to me. I don't think he's going to be a high volume guy, but I do project him here to get anywhere between 14 and 18 touches. And I think at that price tag, that definitely interests me, especially if the game environment is going to play in his favor and they're going to be playing with a lead here. He's the one that's kind of standing out to me. I just think he's too cheap for the offense he's in, the opportunity he can get in the red zone. And I just don't think this is going to be – it doesn't feel like a Kamara game this week. Do you agree with that analysis there? Do you have any thoughts on the running back situation for the Saints this week?
My guy I think I really like is Michael Thomas. I know he broke the slate last week. He's going to be pretty popular. I just think he's at a good price. Where is it? Yeah, let me jump back over. Sorry about that. 8,100. His price is kind of up there, but
yeah.
I think he's not the worst play. My only issue is Breeze's home road splits. I don't think I'm going to have much from this game. I don't think I'll have much Kamara. I don't think I'll have much Ingram. I get why people would go there. I'm not really I feel like I'd like the Saints guys if they were at home. They're in Cincinnati, correct?
Yeah, they're in Cincinnati. They're definitely
if the Saints were at home, I'd have a lot more love for them. I think the only play that I'm really kind of interested in is the defense for cash games or tournaments.
Yeah, I actually have plenty of interest in Tyler Boyd. I know his price is kind of steep at 7,500, but he's gonna see coverage from PJ Williams according to Pro Football Focus. One of the worst corners on the slate. Boyd has a 44% advantage rating here. We've seen some pretty big games out of him this season. And I just think they're going to force feed him. He saw 10 targets last week. We've seen him, with 15 targets in games, 9, 7. I think the volume is going to be very, very secure there for Boyd in a very good matchup. And I also think in a favorable game environment, because I do expect the Bengals to be chasing points, forcing them to throw. In addition to that, we talked about a little bit last week how, the Saints have been pretty stout against the run. So I definitely think that, this is a situation where Boyd can have a big game. I think he's going to be popular, and I get that. But this is kind of chalk I'm willing to eat here because it's just such a good spot. Everything just, kind of all the ducks line up in line here for me. And it just makes a lot of sense rostering someone like Boyd with the type of upside he has.
Yeah, no, I like the call. I just think there's going to be better value on the slate. And I also think a lot of Boyd's production is coming because you have A.J. Green taking the top off the defense. There's so much focused coverage. I know the matchup is an unreal matchup versus P.J. Williams. I just think that I would rather let this whole situation play out. You don't really know. John Ross is going to be the guy that everyone's going to think is going to step in and kind of take over those targets, but I don't think that'll be the case. I think it'll be spread out. I actually like Alex Erickson at 3,400 for like deep GPPs or tournaments. If Ross's ownership gets high, I think you could pivot there. Like you said, it's a positive game script. I don't love Cincinnati's offense without AJ Green. Like, I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball with Mixon. The Saints defense has been one of the best in the league at stopping the run. I just feel that you can kind of go other places on the slate. I know Tyler Boyd's going to be chalky, but I think I'll pass in terms of like rostering him unless something like drastic changes. I don't think I'll have much Boyd.
Yeah, this is a game where I feel like I'm a little bit more intrigued by than you. But it's not a game I'm super bullish on, so I totally see why. It's not kind of standing out to you as much as maybe most people think it should. So I agree. Very tough. Like I'm not certain that Boyd is going to be a staple of my my build. But I know that I do want to have exposure to him and maybe be over the field. They just like this spot way too much. And I think
I get why you like him like 100%. I get the play. Like I think he's in an unbelievable spot. They're not going to be able to run, so they're going to have to throw. He should see those targets, but it's just like, is Dalton going to be able to get the job done? I don't know. I hate having to rely on Andy Dalton in anything. I don't have to rely on him in cash games.
And I trust me, it's uneasy when you're relying on someone like Andy Dalton. It's always been uneasy. So I can definitely relate to why you do not feel that way. Anything else here before we move on to this next game?
No, I think we hit it.
Atlanta heading over to Cleveland to take on the Browns. This game has a 50.5 over-under. It has not moved since it opened. The Falcons are 5.5-point favorites. That has jumped up 2 points. They opened up at 3.5-point favorites here. They have a 28 implied team total, and the Browns have a 22.5 implied team total. Dookie Johnson had a very, very good game last week. We talked about him. I am going back to the wall this week. I just think he's too cheap, 4,700. I think the new coaching staff here knows what they're doing, getting him involved in the passing game. Perfect matchup for a pass-catching back. I also think a perfect game environment. I don't know if he's going to be flat out the chalkiest running back on the slate, but I really, really like Duke Johnson here this week. Give me your thoughts on this game and your thoughts on Duke Johnson.
Yeah, finally, Duke Johnson, someone like has the presence of mind to get him involved in the game script in Cleveland. I honestly think that Duke Johnson's in a great spot. Caught all 9 targets last week for 78 yards and 2 TDs. Nick Chubb as well, but it's kind of like that's my only issue. I don't think Duke Johnson will be the chalk for that reason, just because of how much volume Nick Chubb's gotten on the ground. Duke only got 1 carry last week. Chubb ran for 22 times for 85 yards, scored a touchdown. So you're kind of splitting usage in the backfield with those 2 guys. So I'd kind of stay away. I think that people could go to either one in cash games, but I'd much rather play a guy like Dion Lewis, who seems to be getting more of the share in that Tennessee offense versus the Patriots. But yeah, honestly, I like Duke. I like Chubb. As of right now, probably tournament plays for me. I like Jarvis Landry a lot too, 6,200. I think he has to get going eventually. This is a good spot. Atlanta struggles versus pass-catching running backs and slot receivers. So Jarvis is in a good spot at 62.
Yeah, he's expected to see Brian Poole in a matchup that does favor Landry here at 7% advantage rating over at Pro Football Focus. I agree. The volume is not consistent enough for Duke to consider him in cash games. So I'm with you. More of a tournament play for me. I like him a ton. I'm glad you mentioned Dion Lewis. We'll talk about him when we get there. But I wrote both of them up in the Flex Targets article this week over at footballdiehards.com. I like them both a lot. Atlanta has just been so bad, so bad. They're known to just allow the short stuff, like you mentioned. They've allowed the most receptions to running backs this season, the most receiving yards, and 3 receiving touchdowns to the position, which is tied for third most in the league. They're allowing a ton of fantasy points per game, the most actually to the position. So lots to love here for this backfield. I like Chubb. I think he's so talented. I think they're finally going to start using him as well. I'm just concerned that, if they're chasing, points here by a good amount, how much is he going to be involved? I'd rather take my chances in tournaments with someone like Duke Johnson. I'm with you on Jarvis Landry. The volume has been there. Good matchup. Anything on David Njoku? I know he's a little bit banged up, but it doesn't look like he's going to miss this game, though. If I'm not mistaken, he was limited in today's practice, but I can confirm that. But any thoughts there on David Njoku this week? He remained limited. He's dealing with knee and rib injuries. It doesn't look like he's going to, miss this game. After seeing 0 targets in week 8, he saw 5 last week. Didn't really do much, just 4 catches for 53 yards. How do you feel about this matchup for him?
Yeah, Njoku makes a player pool. He's cheap. They're probably going to be playing from behind. He's probably like my 3rd or 4th tight end. I'm not like in love with him, but for the price, I'll take it. That's kind of how I feel.
On the other side, this Falcons offense is intriguing to me, but I actually like Tevin Coleman quite a bit. He's coming off a big game. 88 rushing yards, caught 5 passes for 68 yards, 2 touchdowns, 32.6 DraftKings points. Browns have been very vulnerable against the opposing running backs this season, allowing the 3rd most fantasy points per game. Over 1,500 total yards to the position, 13 total touchdowns, 12 rushing, which is the most in the league right now. Give me your thoughts here on someone like Tevin Coleman at 5,400. I think he's going to be popular this week because of last week's performance, but I think it's rightfully so.
Yeah, so all these value running backs that went off last week, and it's funny because all the value is at low-end running back. So in tournaments, I kind of want to go high. So I don't know if Tevin Coleman's going to make my player pool, but he's obviously in a great spot versus Cleveland, who's been pretty a pretty nice matchup for running backs in terms of giving up DK points. So yeah, I like Tev. I just don't know how much I'm going to have him because I'm kind of think I'm going to focus my build on higher end running backs this week. Yeah,
and Julio Jones finally got into the end zone last week. Caught 7 balls for 121 yards, a touchdown. First score of the season for him. Look, this is not the most ideal matchup, but someone like Julio Jones is just a target monster. He's going to get the volume, offers a pretty safe floor. Not someone I'm considering as a core play this week. But you got to talk about Julio Jones here. Is he going to be someone that you're pretty bullish on, or is just someone or a receiver that if he fits in, you'll go ahead and plug him in this week, or you're just staying away? What route are you taking here with someone like Julio Jones?
Yeah, so I'm probably going to stay away from Julio this week. He's probably going to get Denzel Ward, who's been very solid versus number 1 wideouts throughout the year. So I don't think I'm going to be chasing that Julio TD. So I'm going to pass on Julio.
Yeah, I'm on the same boat, and I'm passing on Matt Ryan as well here. This is, the Browns' pass defense has been somewhat decent, and they're number 2 in DVOA against the pass, right behind Denver. So I don't feel strongly about the passing game here for the Falcons this week. I actually like Tevin Coleman quite a bit. I think that the run game is where it's at. So any defenses here? I mean, Atlanta hasn't really been all that great. The Browns are at home, but their defense, has just they're not all that great. So any defenses here, or is this just a game where you're kind of a couple pieces here and there and moving on?
Yeah, a couple pieces here and there and moving on. No, don't really love their defenses.
All right, so on to this next game here. You got Jacksonville heading to Indy to take on the Colts. This is one of those games that you have a team that passes a ton in the Colts. They've actually been running the ball a little bit more efficient as of late. But this is a tough matchup. It's a division game. Jacksonville's defense is very strong. This game has a 47 over-under. The Colts have a 25 implied team total. Jaguars have a 22 implied team total. Pretty much a pick 'em if you ask me, because typically the home team gets 3 points, and that's what we're seeing here. Give me your thoughts on this game. This is a game I'm not really going to have a ton of this week, at least not at this time.
Yeah, it's interesting because the total's kind of high for a Jacksonville game. They're in the Dome in Indy. I think so. I think you could consider Luck as a tournament play at 5,500 just because how cheap he is. I don't think I'd go there, but I like Doyle as well, 4,300. You have to figure that a lot of the this offensive distribution is going to be to Doyle or Ebron just because of having Ramsey on T.Y. Hilton. So those would be the two guys I'd kind of be interested in if I was to play anyone from Indy. Then Luck as well if I was going to stack.
Now, it's worth noting here, and this is something I should have said, when I was introducing this game here. And Leonard Fournette expected to be back this week. He's been dealing with a hamstring injury. Hasn't played since week 4. He was able to get in a full practice yesterday, and he's on track to play here. 6,300. There's no word on whether he's going to be limited or not, or where he's going to be, a full go. There's just been no word on that. Is this some piece of information that you're going to be monitoring? As far as he's concerned, this is a Colts defense that they've allowed nearly 100 rushing yards per game. It's a little under that, but not too far from it. They just don't allow a ton of touchdowns, so they've done a good job at keeping running backs out of the end zone here. Would you have any interest in Fournette at 6,300, or is that too much of a risk for you to take?
I think it's a little risky just because I kind of like Indy in this spot. And if the game script kind of goes away from Jacksonville, it will go away from Leonard Fournette. They'll incorporate Yeldon, and even at 6,300, I don't think it's kind of worth the play. We have a lot of value running backs, and then we have a lot of high-end running backs, and Fournette's like in the middle. So I don't think there's a real need to go there.
Yeah, and just to add some extra, positive news for the potentially for the passing game here for the Colts. Marlon Mack is dealing with a foot injury. He's been limited at practice all week, pretty much. It doesn't appear that he's going to miss, but he has the questionable tag on him at this moment. If he does sit here, they really don't have a threat in the running game. Nyheim Hines. Pretty much going to catch passes out of the backfield, not really running between the tackles a ton, especially against his defense. So there really won't be, too much to be concerned about. And, Jordan Wilkins just hasn't gotten it going this year at all. So even if he does get, the nod to start, if Max sits, and I'm not saying that's going to be the case because there's no signs pointing in that direction, but it is worth noting he is dealing with that foot injury that has him questionable. Any narrative street interest in someone like Adante Moncrief? 7 targets last game, 10 targets the game before that. Only 3 in week 6, but 14 in week 5. So he's seen at least 7 targets in 3 of his last 4 games, and will be facing his former team.
Yeah, Moncrief's a pretty good play. If you're a revenge narrative guy, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not. I like throwing that out there because I have friends of mine that, they talk to me about the scenario and how this game, and because he used to play for the team and he's going to come out and give it his all. A lot of these guys come out and give their all pretty much every week. We see it. So, yeah, I'm not a narrative guy either, but I did want to toss that out there. He's only 4,700. And if you're building your rosters as you're considering doing, top heavy at the running back position, guys like this are guys you might want to consider, especially that you think this game is going to be in favor of the Colts offense, where the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to be chasing points. So I think Colts defense is pretty intriguing here, to be honest with you. This is a Jacksonville offense that has Blake Bortles under center, and we very well know that he is very prone to turnovers and makes a ton of mistakes. And this is a scruffy Colts defense. I mean, they're not great by any means, but they get to the quarterback, they force turnovers. They can make things happen, and if there's a game where they could turn a turnover into a touchdown, I think this would be it, because they might have several opportunities to get it done. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's. I was just checking something I missed. What'd you say?
No, it's no, that's cool, man. Hey, listen, I know it's basketball is about to lock in about 20 minutes. So I know you're finalizing those lineups as well. I've been glancing at them myself. No, I was just basically the Colts defense. Is that someone that you're going to be considering at 2,800, considering the matchup against Blake Bortles?
I think you can always consider a defense versus Blake Bortles, but Atlanta, like we talked about, is at the same price, and I wasn't really high on them. Point per dollar that Atlanta's popping. I don't really know about the Colts, though. I think it's all up to you. I'm kind of have like two or three defenses that I'm interested in this week, and that's about it.
All right, on to the next game, and that is the Cardinals heading over to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs. Bobby, this Kansas City offense has just been lights out all season. Patrick Mahomes just gets it done against anyone. It appears that no matter who he faces, he can rack up the points. This game has a 50-point over-under. The Chiefs are 16.5-point favorites here. They have a 33.25 implied team total. And you got the Browns at a 22. I'm sorry, the Cardinals at a 16.75 implied team total here. Give me your thoughts on this game.
I really like the Chiefs. That's basically, I think that Tyreek Hill's underpriced. I think that Kareem Hunt's in a great spot, and I think he's probably the best point per dollar running back on the slate. I know a lot of people are going to go up to Gurley and Melvin Gordon. I really like Kareem Hunt. And yeah, I think I don't mind Kelsey with Patrick Peterson covering Tyreek. Tyreek's more of a tournament play, obviously, but Sammy Watkins is going to be out. I just think that he can pretty much beat anyone, so I'm not really worried. But with Sammy Watkins out, Patrick Peterson covering Tyreek, I think Kelsey and Hunt are in play to see a lot of distribution in terms of like the market share. So I like these Chiefs guys.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like I say every week, I'm never going to talk anyone off of Mahomes here. He just seems to get it done against every defense he plays. 30 fantasy points, and at least 30 fantasy points in 4 consecutive games. Hasn't scored fewer than 25 fantasy points in all but one game this season, and that was against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So it was a tough matchup for him. And even when he doesn't throw 40 times, he's still very efficient. We saw last week, 32 attempts, completed only 23 of those. 70 or not only, he completed 23 of those for 72%. 3 touchdowns, 375 yards. He's thrown over 300 yards in every single game since week 2. You gotta like him here. Obviously, if they're going to be playing with a big lead, I don't anticipate for him to throw a ton. But I also think that if they're playing with a big lead, he's going to have something to do with it. No less than 3 touchdowns in each of his last 4 games. I like him a ton here. I just really do. The only concern I have is obviously we might not get 4 quarters out of him, which is definitely concerning to me. Kareem Hunt is one of my favorite plays on the slate. It just makes so much sense. This is a bad Arizona run defense. His role in the passing game has increased. The usage is there. He's a red zone guy. There's so much to like here from Hunt. So I agree with you. I think Hunt is such a good play here. Tyreek Hill, tournament play for me only, but I don't think it's necessary to go there this week, Bobby. I'd much rather go with someone like, a Kareem Hunt. When you look at the price, it is enticing at 7,300 because he has slate breaking upside, but I just don't think it's necessary to go there this week. And as far as Travis Kelce, how are you going to treat Travis Kelce this week?
I like Kelce. I think I'm going to go lower in terms of cash games, but I definitely could see pairing him up in tournaments with Mahomes, just because Patrick Peterson's going to be on Tyreek, and obviously Sammy Watkins doesn't look like he's going to play this week. So I think Kelce should see a good share of targets. Arizona loves to blitz, so I think they're one of the higher teams in the league in terms like blitz percentage. They might even lead the league. So like Hunt's in a great spot for the dump off passes, and I would assume Kelce would be as well. So yeah, I don't hate Kelce for tournaments.
Yeah. Anything from the Arizona side? I mean, the Chiefs defense, the Chiefs defensively are not that great, but it's tough to really have a ton of interest in this offense for the Cardinals. I guess someone like Kirk, if you want to throw a tournament flyer, makes some sense because he's been pretty consistent as far as volume is concerned. But again, it's no core place for me here. It's not an offense that I have a ton of interest in. Do you differ in opinions there?
So the Chiefs defense should be the highest owned cash game defense with the spread being 16.5. The thing is, in terms of game theory, the Chiefs defense really isn't great. So if you could find some value that you like on Arizona, like it wouldn't be the worst play. I just don't really see anything that's popping. Kirk is a good call and rookie Seals Jones, but you're only going to play them as one-offs, and do you really want to play those guys as one-offs? I don't know if I'd like to go there.
Yeah, and that's my concern as well. Any interest in someone like David Johnson, who really hasn't been efficient, but this is this sets up to be a good matchup, and they might use him out of the backfield catching passes a little bit more in this kind of situation, or is he someone that, considering the price and all the other running backs in that range, just doesn't make your player pool?
What if Rosen comes out and lights it up, throwing passes to David Johnson? Arizona's on fire. Leftwich is calling all the right plays.
And that's the thing. They're coming off a bye, and they're preparing for this game.
Yeah, they got the bye. You could be right. Like David Johnson's in a real good spot. Looking at it, 6,800. Yeah, I don't actually hate this stack for tournaments.
I mean, when you look at it from just the numbers perspective, the Chiefs have allowed the second most receptions to running backs, the second most receiving yards to running backs, and are tied for the most receiving touchdowns to opposing backs. So obviously there's a smash spot for David Johnson, but the problem is we don't know how he's going to be utilized. We haven't seen him be a huge factor in the passing game, but look what happened with Duke Johnson when they had a coaching change, and play calling change. They've got him involved, and to his strengths. And that's what I think could happen here with David Johnson. It's a guessing game. But if he is involved a little bit more in the passing game in this contest, I think he has an opportunity to put up big numbers, and I don't think anyone's going to be on him. I'm not going to completely, auto lock him into my lineups, but I'm not going to keep him out of my player pool either, because I do think this is an interesting situation and an interesting spot for him. So that's where I stand there with him. No one really a core play from Arizona for me, but I again, you make up a great point here with Rosen. There's a chance that he could come out and just sling it because they're going to be chasing points. New play calling might be more efficient. We don't know. It's a big question mark.
Off the bye.
Yeah, they've had how much time to prepare,
No. So I guess I'm like, it's nice you pointed that out. Yeah, I think Arizona, you definitely for deep GPPs, like if you're making 150 lineups, like I wouldn't be against throwing a couple stacks in there.
Yeah, like in a millionaire maker tournament, like putting David Johnson in your lineup just because there's a ceiling. At the end of the day, he still has that ceiling. It's It's a matter of how he's being used. And the offensive line, if he was being used more in the passing game, he wouldn't be 6,800. He'd be, mid-7, closer to 8 if he was a high, volume in the passing game like we've seen in years past. And that's just not the case this year. So I'm pretty – I wish he was a little bit cheaper because it'd make my decision so much easier. It's a tough price to kind of, take chances with. When I took a chance last week with Duke Johnson, he was sub 4K. Much easier to take a chance and a risk with someone like that than someone at 6,800 because you're still paying a pretty hefty price. But just food for thought there for those playing a ton of lineups. Definitely something to keep in mind this week here. Anything else on this game?
No, I think we covered the majority.
All right, the next game is New England heading to Tennessee to take on the Titans. This game has a 46.5 over-under. I'm a bit surprised by that. But 74% of the bets are currently on the over. The Patriots have an implied team total of 26.5. The Titans have an implied team total of 20 points. 6.5-point favorites on the road here. Give me your thoughts here. You alluded to Dion Lewis this week. I am totally on board with you. At least 19 touches in each of his last 2 games, over 20 DraftKings points in each of those games, and a total of 100 or more yards in each of those games as well. The role in the passing game has gone up. Talk to me about cheap Dion Lewis and how much is too much this week.
Yeah, so I think Dion Lewis is a great spot. Point per dollar, I think he's the best running back on the slate. For your revenge narrative, guys, this is a pretty good spot here. And you're getting Patriots defense that really struggles to cover backs like Lewis. I think he's going to start my cash game builds. And yeah, Mariota at 4,700. I like that play. And Corey Davis as well, even though he's going to get Stephon Gilmore. I think you could also make a case for who's the other receiver, Tywan Taylor as well. So I think if you want to if you think that Gilmore is going to shadow Corey Davis and play him pretty well, then you could definitely use some Tywan Taylor, Mariota, Corey Davis stacks in tournaments.
Yeah, this is an absurdly tough matchup for Davis, but it's tough to ignore a receiver at 4,500 that, is going to just be peppered with targets, a good game script because there should be chasing points here against the Patriots. So 10 targets last week, 4,500. Listen, the matchup is tough, but this is a young, talented receiver, and if he sneaks one into the end zone here, I think he can easily pay off the salary. I'm not a core play of mine, but I just think it's a very, very fair price for him. I'm with you 100% with Dion Lewis. A core play of mine. I'm actually starting my builds with him in tournaments with him and potentially Duke as 2 under 5K running backs that have plenty of upside. And I think Lewis has a very strong floor as well, which is important here. So I think this is a really good spot for him. We've talked about in the past shows how the New England linebackers are not that quick or not that fast. They do struggle against these quick, speedy pass-catching backs. And again, you mentioned the narrative street. Nothing I'm taking into consideration there, but I do expect Lewis to be fired up for this one. And when you look at this offense, I don't know what they've waited for all season long, but when you look at this offense, it flows so much better. And I mean, by a good amount with Lewis in that backfield than with Derrick Henry. So I just think this sets up like a perfect scenario for someone like Lewis at a very cheap price. So I like him, a core play of mine for sure. On the New England side, give me your thoughts here. It looks like, are we expecting Gronk to play? I know that it's risky. He got limited practice today. He's still dealing with that back and ankle injury, missed last week's game. So I'm not going to go there this week. I haven't been, pretty much rostering him all season long. I think James White should continue to be considered a strong play regardless of Sony Michel or not. His role in the passing game is just so significant. And his price tag has gone up, but it just justifies it. Only 2 weeks ago he was 8,800. Now he's 73. Granted, it's much more than we're used to. We're used to paying mid fives, 6'7", 6'5". 7,300 seems a bit steep for someone like James White, but he's just been so efficient and so consistent all year that I'm willing to pay that price tag, man. I think it's fair.
Yeah, no, I like James White. I'm worried about Sony getting back. I'm worried about Gronk getting back. I really like Josh Gordon at 6K. I think he's in a good spot, but I have the same issues as I do with White. You're adding all those guys back to the offense. Malcolm Butler, legitimate, like whoever he's on, I think you want that guy in tournaments. If Gronk were to sit, yeah, my guy would be Josh Gordon. But yeah, I get White as a play as well. White's usage is through the roof, so I don't hate that as well.
Yeah, it looks like Malcolm Butler is expected to be on Josh Gordon, so I'm with you. I think that's a good call there on Josh Gordon. I think a lot would be dependent on the news, on the Gronk news. If Gronk is out, I actually think Gordon makes for a very, very strong play. If Gronk is officially ruled out, I know Edelman is also dealing with some ankle injuries, but I don't think that's going to keep him off the field here. And when you look at Gordon's price tag at 6K, I just think that the ceiling he offers, that's just too cheap of a price tag there. And we've seen already at least 100 receiving yards in 2 of his last 3 games. So good scenario here for him, good spot. And like you mentioned, Malcolm Butler, he should easily be able to win that one-on-one matchup there. Any other quarterbacks? I know you mentioned Mariota. Is he a core player of yours, or just someone that you'll be sprinkling maybe in some tournament lineups?
He could be a core play in just because of his price at 4,700. I mean, that's too cheap for a guy with his floor. Patriots have struggled versus running backs that can run. He's mobile, as we've seen. He's going to turn the ball over, but they also have that defense where that's kind of bend but don't break. So they give you the yards and they hope they stop you at the goal line. I'll take all the yards in DFS that I can get, and I think Mariota could provide that. Maybe runs one in. So, yeah, at 4,700, I like it. I think he's a real good play.
Okay. And any interest in Tom Brady? Because, I mean, I don't think it's the best of spots for Brady's, to be honest with you.
I actually think Brady could shred, but I don't like paying up for quarterbacks on DraftKings. And what's his price? He's at
he's not that bad. He's 6K.
He's 6K.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's the worst spot. Like the 6K is a pretty good price. Their pass defense, I'm not impressed with it. So I don't know. I just think that there are players that you can take advantage of. Logan Ryan, Malcolm Butler. They've been New England guys. He knows them pretty well. Probably knows their tendencies. It might not be the worst tournament option. Brady this week.
Yeah, whenever I think of Brady versus the Titans, I think of that game that it was just like snow and he tossed 6 touchdown passes. It was insane, man. I was just like, I watched that game. That was an incredible game. So I like quarterbacks in other spots a little bit better than I do Brady here, but I think he makes sense in tournaments because I don't really think he's going to garner much ownership, if you ask me here. Anything else from this game? I think we covered this one pretty good here.
No, I think we got it.
All right, so on to the next game, and the next game is Washington headed over to Tampa Bay. Bobby, this one has me a little stumped here. The Bucs are actually favored at home here against the Redskins. I think the Redskins are a far superior team. I know they're dealing with a ton of injuries, and maybe that's the reason why. But this game has a 51 over under here. Again, like I said, the Bucs are favored by 2 points. They actually opened as 3-point favorites. Or I'm sorry, no, they're actually 3-point favorites. They opened as 1-point favorites. It's jumped down 2. They have an implied team total of 27. The Redskins have an implied team total of 24. I think this is a game that the Redskins should be able to win. Give me your thoughts here on this game and your DFX exposure here.
Yeah, so honestly, I think the Bucks defense for me is kind of popping point per dollar, but I'm not going to go there, but it's just something to note. In terms of like guys that you'd want to play in this game, I'm not going to have a ton, but the total's so high. Fitzpatrick is definitely one of the top 3 quarterbacks, I would say, on the slate at 5,900. Peterson, he's in a good spot. Chris Thompson has a positive game script with Alex Smith. I guess you could like Redskins guys going against Tampa Bay. A lot of people will. It's going to be really chalky. It's just a matter of like, I think I could prioritize other people, other stacks. And you can like Tampa Bay guys going versus Washington. I can't believe I'm not going to have as much just looking at the total. I don't think I'll have as much in this game as I probably should have.
I think Fitzpatrick's a good point per dollar play. I don't know, man. I respect the Washington defense a little bit more than most, and it's just one of those things that I don't know if this game is going to be that high scoring. Obviously the match. I
like the under.
Yeah, I like the under as well here. It's the over under is already going down. It's moved down half a point. The betting seems pretty even there at 49%, 51 being on the over. This is an ideal matchup for the Washington offense, but it's very tough to really like anyone. Alex Smith, first 300-yard game was last week in the entire season. Really hadn't been doing much all year long. First time scoring over 20 fantasy points last week, and it was barely over 20 fantasy points. It's just not an offense I'm super excited about here. I wouldn't mind throwing in some Jordan Reed into some tournament lineups. He's 4,400. This is a really great matchup for him. He has been dreadful all season long, but something that did pop out for me is he has at least 6 targets in 3 of his last 4 games, with 9 and 12 in 2 of those games. He hasn't done much with them, but this is just one of those spots like for any player, it's a get right spot. I feel like this Bucks defense has just been a get right spot for some of these players. And when you look at, they're what they allow to tight ends, 48 receptions, 650 receiving yards, which is the most, and then 5 touchdowns to tight ends, which is tied for second most here. And when you look at fantasy points per game, they're allowing the second most to the position. When you think of what Jordan Reed is capable of doing, it just, makes him very intriguing at that 4,400 price tag, especially knowing that likelihood is he's not going to get a ton of ownership. He is dealing with a back injury, which is worth noting, but so far it doesn't seem like it's going to keep him out of this game. I know he's been bad, man, but would you consider someone like Reed in tournaments?
Yeah, one of my buddies mentioned Reed, and I think it's like not the worst play. Like I like the thought process. I'm not against it, so I guess you can definitely play him in tournaments. I think people may even go there in cash games. The matchup's phenomenal, but I want to see Alex Smith throw him the ball. Like it seems like he hasn't really all season. It's kind of been an issue with Washington trying to get him involved. It's kind of been Adrian Peterson, and that's it.
Yeah, and that's the thing here. Like, so you've been saying it pretty much all season long. Like, this is a Bucks defense that funnels, to the pass. They don't allow a ton of yards. They've been burned by running backs as far as touchdowns are concerned. But when it comes to yardage, they're not allowing a ton of yardage. And unless Peterson gets in the end zone, I personally don't think he's going to have that great of a game here. But if they're funneling to the pass, and again, according to Vegas, his game script is going to. It looks like the Bucks are going to be playing with a lead here, so that might force Smith to pass a little bit more than we're used to. I just think this is a good spot for the passing game. I just don't love it, because it hasn't been all that great this year, which does have me, concerned. Otherwise, I'd be all over someone like Alex Smith this week. And if Chris Thompson was not ruled out, he'd be someone we've been talking about too, but he's not going to play this game. So I think this is a spot where I won't roster Alex Smith, but I will be considering Jordan Reed.
You know what else I've been saying all year long?
Talk to me.
Vernon Davis.
Oh, man.
Big Vern.
I think for Christmas, what I'm going to do is send you Vernon Davis jersey.
I met him once. He's a good guy. Nice guy.
I've heard great things about him, and when you see the things he does off the field are very, respect to the man. He's a great off the field dude. I used to like him back in the San Francisco days. I actually, on season long leagues, I would, overdraft him.
Current days with Alex Smith, no Chris Thompson. They're gonna have to
eventually, right? Eventually, it's gonna happen.
Tight ends.
They are.
It happened. It happened for someone. It already happened. It was like the third pass of the game. He caught a TD. He had 12 points. He made value right away. He didn't see another pass.
I think it was against the Panthers or something like that. A couple in week 5 or 4 or 6 or something like that. I think it was the Panthers.
I think Thompson was that too. So.
Yeah. So I mean, listen, you could definitely throw that into one of your 150 lineups in the Millionaire Maker. That's for sure, without a doubt. It is just a great matchup for them. Anything on the Bucs side? I know you mentioned Fitzpatrick. Who would you be pairing him up with if you decide to go in that direction?
D. Jackson, Godwin, but they let me down pretty bad last week. My guy Adam Humphries went off last week.
He just continues, man.
I had no shame. Every time Fitzpatrick plays, he never throws him the ball. So I just stopped rostering him. And then, like, the 1 week I don't roster him, he throws it to him as much as he did, and he goes for 2 TDs. And I don't know, did he go for 100 yards? Probably. I don't know. He seemed like he was doing work in that game.
Yeah. It's worth noting here, Maurice Harris, 12 targets last week. Had a really big game. He was Maurice Harris. Yeah, Maurice Harris, 12 targets last week. Caught 10 for 124 yards. Scored 25.4 DraftKings points, man. Only thing is that Jamison Crowder, I believe, is in line to return this week. So I don't know how much of an impact that's going to have on Harris, but it's worth noting, man, because 12 targets is 12 targets. These people are all beat up at the receiver position. If I'm not mistaken, Paul Richardson on the IR. He won't, pretty much done for the season here. So they're
Bibbs.
Well, yes. Yeah, Bibbs is going to
he had a TD last week too.
He did have a TD last week. He did have a two. Thing with Bibbs is just like, I don't know, man. His role in the passing game in times where the opportunity, was there for him, it really hasn't been there. I don't know how they feel about him. Trust me, I would love, a pass catching back in this situation, especially if I think that they're going to be trailing points here. But that's why I'm kind of leaning on someone like Jordan Reed, because I think it's a good, to attack the middle of the field against the Bucs makes a ton of sense to me here. From Tampa Bay, it's very hard for me to love anyone here. I don't know. Like I said, I wouldn't mind taking a shot on Fitzpatrick in tournaments. I think I think he's a good point per dollar play. But it's tough to pair him up with anyone because, again, I just respect the Washington defense somewhat here. So not a situation I'm super, super excited about, even though that the over-under here is suggesting otherwise. Any final thoughts in this game? I think we covered this one pretty good. And I think the next one is going to be one of those games where we just mention it and move on. But any final thoughts in this game before we move on to the next game?
No, I think we covered it.
All right, so the most unappealing game of the week and potentially of the season, the Bills headed over to the Jets, taking in New York, 36.5 over-under here. 55% of the bets are on the under. The Jets have a 21.75 implied team total. The Bills have a 14.75 implied team total here. I believe Josh McCown will get the start for the Jets. Sam Darnold has already been ruled out. When you look at Josh Allen, he is questionable with an elbow injury. He was limited in practice today. I believe Derek Anderson is still not practicing. He's in the concussion protocol. So this could be a battle between Josh McCown and your boy Nathan Peterman. This is one of those games where I'm taking I'm taking the Jets defense if Peterman starts, and I'm moving on. And I would be considering the Bills defense if I'm trying to get, some, I think, differentiation here. They're both priced up, 3,200 or 3,400, but I think rightfully so. Aside from that, though, zero interest in this game. Nothing at all stands out. Do you have a difference of opinion here, or are you kind of on the same boat?
I'm with you. Nothing. Jets D.
Yeah, it's awful, man. It's awful. That's why I said we were going to be pretty quick here, guys. Not going to waste any time. All right, so I'm ready to move on to the next game. The next game is one I have a little bit more interest in. And I think there's a couple of angles you could take here, and that is the Chargers going to Oakland to take on the Raiders here. This game has a 50 over/under. The Chargers are 10-point road favorites. They have an implied team total of 30 points. Raiders have an implied team total of 20 points. Look, it looks like the Raiders have just given up on football this season after what we saw last week. This should certainly be a game where the Chargers can easily win, blow them out, but they're still going to score a ton of points here, I think. And this is an offense that stands out to me a ton. You can go in many different directions. Phillip Rivers is very affordable. And even though this is a game where they should be playing with a lead, they're never shy to let him throw the ball. And it's just such a bad defense that he can get it done even if he's not throwing the ball 40-plus times. And you look at Melvin Gordon, he is priced up. I'm hesitant to pay that price tag. I think this is a smash spot for him. I think he can run wild here. But are we going to be happy with 25 fantasy points from Melvin Gordon paying $9K? I certainly don't think I'd be happy with that, especially in tournaments, which is why I'm a little bit hesitant, because I don't think we're going to get a full game out of him. I really don't. I'm not into the game of projecting blowouts, but this is one of those games. If you're watching football, the Raiders just seem like they don't care. They have nothing to play for. They're on a 3-year plan, I think, with Gruden. So I'm a little bit hesitant to pay that $9K price tag here for Gordon. I know you're not a Gordon guy, but are you paying that price tag for him this week?
I like Melvin Gordon this week. That Oakland Raiders defense is absolute trash. So I might rather go to Gordon than Gurley, but Gurley's popping more for me, point per dollar. I like Keenan Allen a lot, and Rivers. Rivers is in a smash spot, man.
That's what I like here. I really like Rivers. I love Melvin Gordon. In a vacuum, I love him this week, right? Compared to pretty much it. But when you're looking at the price, I'd rather pay $8,500 for Kareem Hunt. You're saving. It's similar situation because of blowout potential. But you're saving $500, and I think the ceilings are right there as far as when you compare the two backs. So I don't know, man. It's tough to pay up. I like that Keenan Allen call quite a bit. It's only a matter of time before he has one of those big games. I think he's fairly priced. We saw him have a pretty decent game against the Raiders in Week 5. Caught 8 passes for 90 yards. Someone that just in a really good matchup. When you look at it, he's expected to see Leon Hall, who is graded out below average over at Pro Football Focus, a 27% advantage rating here for Allen. So I'm more bullish on Rivers and Allen than I am on Gordon. Listen, I understand it completely. He is in a smash spot. He can have a huge game, but I don't know. Especially he was dealing with a hamstring injury a couple weeks ago, and if this is a game where they're going to be playing with a heavy lead, they might not need to run him 20 times. And they also have someone like Austin Eckler, who's very efficient when you look at it. And he's someone I actually like quite a bit. If you think this game is going to blow out, he's only 4K. He can catch pass out of the backfield, and he's probably going to get in there with some blowout run if that occurs. So not a core play of mine. Obviously, I'm more bullish on Allen and Rivers here. So anything for you on the Raiders side? I actually, yeah, I'm with you, man. I'm with you. Chargers defense for the win or what?
Williams kind of sneaky in GPPs in this situation. I feel like
who's that?
Tyrell Williams for San Diego. I think is kind of sneaky in GPPs at this price tag.
I think him or Mike Williams actually make some sense if you're trying to be different because Tyrell's been just scoring touchdowns pretty much every game the last couple of weeks. But Mike Williams has that same type of upside. I believe he's found the end zone now in back-to-back games as well. So I like those calls if you're trying to be a little different and you want to get some exposure to this passing. I think those are two guys you can consider. My top defense this week is the Chargers. I don't know how popular they're going to be, but they started off the season a little rocky, but over the last 4 games, they've been much more of what we're used to seeing, getting to the quarterback, forcing turnovers, kind of limiting the damage both through the air and through the ground, and total yardage, double-digit fantasy points in 3 of the last 4 games. Obviously, this is a very volatile position, but if a lot of people are going to be on the Chiefs and they're going to be taking advantage of situations like that, I kind of don't mind pivoting here to someone like the Chargers. I just don't know how popular you anticipate them to be. You have any thoughts there on this defense?
Not really.
No, you don't like them?
The Chargers?
Yeah.
I guess you can. I guess you can roster them, but I think I'm going to go lower down the board. Where are they in terms of price? I'm sorry.
They're 35. No, they're 3,500. Like, I mean, they're a little pricey. They're definitely a little pricey. And point per dollar wise, they don't make a ton of sense. That's probably why they're not popping out of you, because I have their point per dollar is one of the worst of the week. But I just think the upside when you're looking at a defense like this, I'm looking at upside. They can certainly create turnovers and get into the end zone here. And that's kind of what I'm looking for. I think they're going to be able to get to the quarterback as well this week. So this is a very interesting game. I think the best games are these 4:00, games this week. And you're seeing that in our analysis now. Any final thoughts here? I know you mentioned 0 from Oakland. I'm pretty much on the same board. I'm on board with you here with that analysis. Any final thoughts here? Or are you ready to move on to the next game?
No, what do we got? Seattle and the Rams up next?
No, the next game is actually Miami at Green Bay. This is a game I was going to attend. Unfortunately, I was not able to attend. I would have loved to. This is a game that, I think is easily going to be won by the Packers. They're 10-point favorites, 47 and a half over under here. Packers have a healthy 28.75 implied team total. Dolphins, 18.75 implied team total. Talk to me about this game. Do you have any interest here? Anyone standing out to you?
I played Aaron Jones in cash last week. His snap percentage is up. The only reason he's not a 3-down back is because he doesn't really pass block. I think he's a good play in terms of on the Green Bay side. I also think Aaron Rodgers is a great play. Point per dollar, stacking him with Devontae Adams. Valdez-Scantling's another one, especially if Adams is going to draw coverage from that Miami cornerback. His name slipping my mind every week, but I think Rodgers will still throw to Adams, and Adams like 7,800 or something like that. It's a pretty good price.
I have a 7,800, and the corner you're referring to is Xavier Howard.
Xavier Howard, yep, every week.
Yeah, I know. I let you finish. I didn't want, in the middle of your sentence. But yeah, Xavier Howard, he is expected to get Adams. Obviously, tough matchup for Adams. Adams to me is matchup proof, though. The volume is consistent. I'm with you. I think this is a really good matchup for Aaron Jones. When you look at the Dolphins, they're terrible against the run. Problem with Aaron Jones is I don't know what I'm going to get out of him. He's so efficient when he touches the ball. But like you mentioned, his pass blocking is an issue, which is probably why he's not their every down back. But this is one of those games where I think it favors him as far as game script is concerned. I think even if he doesn't get 20 touches, with 14, 16 touches, he can very well break one against his defense for a long touchdown. And make some big plays. So I do have some interest in him. But I'm with you, man. I think the passing game for the Packers is far more intriguing. When you look at Rodgers, he should be able to take advantage of this, Dolphins defense. They have been pretty decent against the pass this year, for what it's worth. But when you're talking about Rodgers in Lambeau Field, it really doesn't matter who he's playing. He can get it done. Devontae Adams makes a ton of sense here at 7,800. I'm with you, man. I think Valdes-Scantling is a very, very strong play. And his one-on-one matchup is far more enticing than that of, Adam. He's actually going to get Torrey McTyer, who grades out well below average at Pro Football Focus. And when you look at what Valdes-Scantling has done over the last 4 games, at least 12.5 fantasy points in each of those games, over 100 yards in 2 of those, scored 2 touchdowns in that time frame, and no fewer than 5 targets in any of those games. So definitely been more involved. I think he's going to step right into that number 2 role for this, Packers receiving core and do very well there. So I like him quite a bit. I think he's underpriced considering his now potentially new role. And this is a good week to just jump on board and ride this Valdes-Scantling train that's been pretty hot lately. Any interest in someone like Jimmy Graham? I know he's dealing with a knee injury, limited, but he's been pretty, solid, I guess you can say, over the last month or so. As far as the targets are concerned, they're there as well. 6 targets last week, found the end zone. Did struggle against the Rams in week 8, but week 6 and 5, at least 9 targets in each of those games. Can I interest you in any Jimmy at 4,600?
Yeah, a little Jimmy G. If that, if the knee's okay, but he's limited right now. So come Sunday morning, if we have a better feel, I'm not against it.
The one reason why I'm glad I'm not going to this game is because I would have to be witnessing Brock Osweiler start for the Dolphins here. I know he hasn't been all that horrific, but he's just not a good quarterback, man. And even though this is a game where they're going to be chasing points and they might have to rely on his arm, are you going to be taking any shots on him at that 4,600 price tag, considering the potential volume he's going to have here against the Packers?
Yeah.
You kind of want to, don't you?
No, no. I'm not going to. We're hitting locks. Kind of, I don't think I'm going to roster much Brock Osweiler.
Yeah, I really have, very little for the Dolphins. Actually, nothing at all here. Very tough to predict their pass catchers. We saw Amendola with 7 targets last week, 6 targets, 7, 11. And you got Devontae Parker after I think it was a career day in week 8 against the Texans. He just laid an egg last week against the Jets. So in a much more favorable matchup, of course, he lays an egg. Very tough to predict here. The running back situation, obviously, Kendon Drake just, last week, 7 touches after being very efficient, for two consecutive weeks here. I don't think this is just a spot for this offense to really get it going. So this is not a situation I'm going to be attacking at all whatsoever. Any final thoughts here in this game before we move on to the final game of the slate?
No, we got it. Brock. Don't play Brock.
Don't play Brock. Don't play any Dolphins players, and be happy, guys. The final game, Seattle's heading over to Los Angeles to take on the Rams. This game has a 51 over-under. Rams are 10-point favorites here. They have a healthy 30.5 implied team total. Seattle has a 20.5 implied team total. Lots of high spreads this week, guys. As you can tell, the last 3 games we've talked about each have a 10-point spread. So it's kind of tough because there is potential blowouts. But we got to play these guys, especially on the Rams. talk to me about this offense, man, because I really, really, really like the Rams. Once again, like I did last week, I really like Cooper Kupp here. I really like Jared Goff. This is a situation I was bullish on last week, and I'm going back to the well. I'm gonna go ahead and roster Goff again. I'm gonna pair him up with Cooper Kupp, who remains the cheapest, receiver in this group here for the Rams. Talk to me about this offense. Talk to me about this game, Bobby.
Yeah, I love Goff, Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods. I'd probably go Robert Woods over Cooper Kupp this week. I think Robert Woods going to get off the snide a little. He's popping for me point per dollar. Gurley's popping for me point per dollar. But do you want to pay up 9-4 with all this running back value on this slate? I actually think this is a good week to pay up for Gurley. Every week's a good week to pay up for Gurley, but I've been fading him in tournaments. I don't think I'm going to fade him this week just because game theory-wise, all these low running backs hit last week, and now they're going to be in play this week in good spots. And I think that you can kind of go up to Gurley and maybe people will kind of shy away from him after the bad week. So I think Gurley's like lock button for me in tournaments. I think
that a lot of people are going to be playing Gordon,
Gordon. They can play Hunt, and then they have Dion Lewis, they have Duke Johnson, they have Tevin Coleman, they have all these guys who are in great spots. DJ, and I just think that with the week, like Gurley, obviously didn't do what we wanted him to. I just think that other people will just go other places. I think this is definitely the week to lock Gurley in tournaments every week. Like I said, you could lock him in, but this week, if people decide to chase these lower value running backs after the performances last week, I think you can have a little advantage over the field in terms of rostering Gurley. You usually don't get that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, man, because this is just one of those situations where he's coming off a subpar game for his standards. When you look at people still look at Seattle like an imposing defense. They're allowing 4.3 yards per carry here. And we've seen, Gurley just be successful even against tough defenses. I think last week we both projected it, last week. Last time this guy faced Seattle, he found the end zone 3 times. And when you look at it, it's funny because when you look at what Seattle has allowed, they've allowed 5 rushing touchdowns. 3 of those belong to Todd Gurley. I think this is a great spot for him. I like this offense quite a bit. Anything from Seattle, because, Russell Wilson has been efficient, but when you look at the volume and you look at, how efficient he's been with the low volume, it just, it's not sustainable. I mean, last week he threw it 39 times. Before that, he had gone, 5 consecutive games throwing the ball 26 times or fewer times. So just I know they're going to be chasing points. I don't know how many times they're going to sling it, but he is fairly priced. I just don't think this is an ideal situation for him.
Yeah, like Russ, I like the game script. I like the situation. I like how he's been playing. I like to pair him with either Lockett or David Moore. David Moore is a guy who's going under the radar week to week, and he's kind of been balling out. So he's someone that I'm definitely intrigued in as a one-off in GPPs. And obviously you can go Baldwin as well.
Yeah, and it's not that this matters, but Lockett did have a pretty solid game against the Rams last time out, which is worth noting here. How are you going to treat this potential Mike Davis kind of chalk? I think people are going to be playing him because, Chris Carson's dinged up. I don't know if he's going to play. I think whether Carson plays or not, to be completely honest with you, I'm fading Mike Davis. This is not a game environment or game script I like for him. I know he caught 7 passes last week, but prior to that, when you look at the rest of the season, he had 10 total catches. He's never been a huge pass catcher in his NFL career. Not a situation that I think plays out in his favor. Even if he is the starter at 4,300, I'm fading. I feel so much better about someone like Dion Lewis or Duke Johnson, especially in tournaments. What are your thoughts on that? Because I feel like he's going to be somewhat popular, especially if Carson's out.
Yeah, I think he's kind of a thin playing cash, just with all the running back value we have and the high end guys in good spots, like we talked about. In tournaments, yeah, you could go there. I just Rams defense. I don't know. He catches passes, so game script will favor him. It'd be interesting if CJ Procise is a scratch like he was last week, which I doubt that will be the case because I feel like he was a healthy scratch last week because Carson was playing. Then I'd definitely be more interested in Mike Davis. But as of right now, not really interested.
You know, and I pretty much like I'm reading news every day and stuff, and Pete Carroll came on and said that they should be getting Rashad Penny more involved. That's coach speak. I don't take that too. You know, I don't consider that too much. But I'm also concerned that he might play a role if Carson's out, in taking some touches away from Mike Davis here.
Well, he should. They spent a first round pick on him.
I thought that was one of the stupidest things they could have done, honestly, because unless they were going to use him, and you can tell right off the bat they weren't anticipating to use him. At least I don't think they were.
They just not have a plan. Like what happened there? Because like if
you know what happened, what happened was they traded away the anchor of their offensive line several years ago to get Jimmy Graham. That completely was a disaster of a trade because it completely ruined what they're good at, and that's pound the ball and let Russell Wilson game manage, and every now and then let him sling it out with someone because he's capable of doing it, and just focus on the defense. And they let go of that scheme that worked for them so well, and they just haven't been able to get it right since, I think. Yeah,
draft a lineman though. Don't draft a running back.
Correct. Exactly. They need O-line help. That's what they should have done.
Carson this year, like, did they just forget? Like, he looked good in the two, 3 games he played. Like, if you have that, you have it.
Yeah.
No reason to draft a running back.
I agree 100%, sir. Any final thoughts here in this game before we close out the evening?
No, that's pretty much it. Good luck on this slate, man.
Yeah, guys. All right. So before we go, make sure to check out the 2-week free trial over at footballdiehards.com, guys. If you need the link, catch me on Twitter at Armando_Marsal. I'll provide that for you. You get 2 free weeks, access to all the content behind the paywall. It's great. Is as soon as you sign up, that's when the 2 weeks start. So you'll definitely have. You can take full advantage of it if you start that on a Monday or a Sunday morning. You'll get 2 Sundays, or actually maybe 3 Sundays with Bobby and I. Every Sunday morning, him and I talk from 11 to about 12:15, 12:30, depending on the day. We go game by game once again with updated news. Make sure to tune in this Sunday. Bobby, tell everyone they can follow you on Instagram and Twitter.
Yeah, Bobby Gomes, DFS on Instagram and Twitter.
Guys, it was a pleasure as always. We look forward to seeing you next week. Good luck to everyone this weekend. And make sure to check us out on Sunday morning at 11 o'clock over at footballdiehards.com. Good night to all.
We off?